Hello everyone, I'm Palpatine001, okay, and we're back with Cities Skylines 2, Part 3.1, Transit by Design. Transit by Design? Well, yes, it is actually a book by one of our top New Zealand transport planners, Nicolas Reid, who wrote and released a book recently called Transit by Design, a practical guide to planning public transport that works. Now, public transport is an intricate part of not only in your real-life cities, but also Cities Skylines 1 and 2. Without functioning transit, your city jams up with cars and you have an ineffectual transit system, more to the point, transport system as a whole. Now we will be, the video is going to be a bit of mix and match between three parts. So I'm going to do a reading out of part 4. On page 222 of the book, called Road and Rail Vehicles. So rail, just for clarification, is light rail, trams, metro and heavy rail. For the sake of argument, because this is not CS1 and Nicholas isn't technically not covering it here in his book, we're not doing monorail. But otherwise, yeah, monorail sits in there as well. We will be covering that because it is an intricate part of noting real-life planning. So I'm also what they call a land use or policy planner and spatial planner, and Nicholas is a transport planner. So we come from the same overall profession, but we branch in different areas, and we are interreliant on each other quite a lot because transport affects land use affects transport, and both affect your city user experience. So the three sets of planning would be working together quite intrinsically and quite close, because when it doesn't, you get silos, and instead you get a mismatch in your transport system, which means your land use is bunged up, or the other way around. Hello Auckland, Tami Waikato, my home city. So we'll do a reading out of that, and then use that to dive in why I use the four main modes: bus, light rail, metro and heavy rail, and what's called mode efficiency, which I have covered for the last 11 years on the efficiencies of the modes, starting with bus being the lowest capacity, being the most efficient on the shortest, working then through to tram to replace the bus when your buses get overwhelmed, then through to metro, which is great for medium to long, and then right up to heavy rail, which is great for medium but definitely long and into city, and also has the highest capacity. And then we will jump in and get the basic of the transit network set up, because we've got everything else, because in 3.0 we did the zones, and then get to the last of the smaller local parks down, and then we will basically let rip. And I need to do this all inside an hour, because the good old YT algorithms don't like hour-long videos and for these kind of formats, game formats, unless you're coming out of a live stream, of which this is not. Now, just briefly, this, as I said, the founding area is ready to go with residential and mixed use. The city centre is all set up. Well, it's got the basic set because I need the central station for intercity rail. And then we've got our basic industry and extraction industries all set up, ready to go as well. The one last major piece of infrastructure I really should be doing is probably connecting this road up to this highway, so there's another way into the city centre. Probably do that off screen. I'll probably do that off screen because in 4.0 is where we release the simulator. So before I dive into the reading and the transcript now, this is an unsolicited review and recommendation, meaning Nicholas has not sorted out. I am giving it of my own free will and convolution into this video today. The Amazon link for the ebook or the hard copy. I like hard copies because I can take it anywhere, not have to worry about publishers deleting them, like we're finding out with our digital games at the moment. And also streaming services. I will read a short passage out of this, and then we'll lay down the transit ready to go, and the parks ready to go for 4.0, getting our first sims and businesses in here. So before we tuck into the book, we'll just cover what's called the efficiency of what I call the efficiency of the modes. So of the four modes, bus, light rail, metro rail, heavy rail, each has an optimum efficiency. That is due to their capacity and optimum distance served. Starting with the humble bus, which is arguably the backbone of your network, although I would say if you've got heavy rail, that is also arguably the backbone. So you've got two backbones serving at both ends of the scale. Buses have the lowest capacity, between anywhere 80 to 130, 130 being the old bendy buses, or as we like to call them, the bendy boys. We used to ride on them in the school, as they used to be the school buses. And also they're the only large bus that can be used to serve airports. Double deckers are often typically a no. And there's a whole thing about that, about buses having to go on tarmacs and fitting under wings and all that. So, but that's another story in of itself. So buses have the lowest capacity and the shortest of mode. So they're short distance. Their bus stops are quite frequently close together compared to metro and especially heavy rail. And as I mentioned, with the capacity, so they're great for short distances and also feeding into the longer distances, such as metro rail or heavy rail. So they're great as feeders. Now you can extend a bus's range by giving it a busway or bus rapid transit, because bus rapid transit is technically cheaper than light rail. Although if you're needing light rail to do what is a bus rapid transit's job, then that could be a bit of a mismatch. But in place of, say, a metro, because metros are quite expensive. So buses, that's your first one, is your buses. Great for local, due to their low capacity, but they can step up to medium. If you've got something like a busway, so in Auckland that would be the very well used Northern Busway, the soon to be Eastern Busway, and the very soon to be Northern Busway, and the very soon Airport to Botany Rapid Transit. We've abandoned all pretenses of going down the light rail line for now. So that's buses. Your next one up is trams. They technically exactly the same as the bus. Great for short distances, and you can see I've got tram lines here. So they're basically, because they are on grade, although you can also do grade separated, which is technically, this is semi-grade separated apart from intersections. Let's see if I've got, I don't usually do mixing with general lanes unless it's for a very specific reason. You can do grade separated as well, and the Cities Skylines 2 does have the assets for grade separated. And yeah, they are there, so you can do grade separated to keep them off the network, but it can be quite land intensive, but I do it from time to time. Otherwise I just run them here, because when you drop in a tram stop on one, and we'll do the architecture ones because I can. You also have also have the plazas as well, which is typically grade separated. When you do the architecture stomps, it's still separated out. In fact, I might actually have one already in action. Yeah. So they're still separated where you've just got them crossing through intersections. But I digress. Trams are treated the same way as buses. They're just, their capacity is higher. So light rail is when your buses are getting overwhelmed, or you've got a case of bus sausage into a confined area, and you need to tangle it out. So that's where your trams would come through. So tram capacities are usually about between 200 to 480. So given that's double the capacity, 2 to 4 times the capacity of the bus. So light rail is your next step up for that short to medium distance. Again, if it is to serve medium distance, trying to not have it cross intersections is one thing, unless you've got good priority. Otherwise, like bus rapid transit, which grade separates out, you would have your grade separated tramways and plazas. And I have an example of a large version of that. This is technically sitting on a transit mall. So that's the busway. This is actually sitting on, this is actually technically a transit mall. Sitting in right here. So that's great when you've got trams all bunching up at once. As well as, of course, you've also got your buses. So that's trams. Next one up. Now, to cover medium distance optimum and medium to long, because it could do it, you're beginning to look at your metro system. Metro will carry anywhere between 400, for some City Skylines 2, it's about 400 to about 800 at the moment for the cut consists I've got. And they're great for medium to long distances. And unlike heavy rail, they also have tight turning geographies and can take greater grade percentages going up or down slopes. So as you can see, I've got the metro here. The catches with, and also with Metro, you can save space by going above ground, or in this case, as I like to do, underground. But it gets hideously expensive. So Metro, you're saying to serve your medium density and high density areas, especially where you need to save space. They can do short distance, but like heavy rail, it's a pretty crap service pattern because the train is stopping frequently rather than going those longer distances. So to fix that problem, and this is with heavy rail as well, the stations are fed. Your stations would be quite far apart, and you would have feeder buses, and of course your cycleways running off those. So your feeder buses would work around it, feeding in to extend the reach of the station by about anywhere between 1.5 to 3 kilometers, depending on how you do it. So that's when you start going full integrated. Then, of course, you've got heavy rail, great for intercity, or when you really need to move those people along. But the catch is with heavy rail, it is the most expensive, it is the most space consuming, unless you bury it underground or elevated, into which it becomes even more hideously expensive than Metro. But it's also great for intercity. So my one, and as we know, heavy rail also carries freight. So my heavy rail systems I usually leave for intercity, but I will also do some of the big, I will do intracity as well when I need to move a lot of people around where the Metro, and especially where the tram and buses are just not going to cut the mustard. Of course, rail works perfectly when it is integrated with another transport mode, whether that is Metro, tram, bus, or all of the above, like I have in the city centre. So you've just got to remember that. And with Metro, with buses, especially for Cities Skylines 1 and 2, your capacity is anywhere between 480 to, at the moment, I think my biggest one is 1200. So up to half the time it's more than my heaviest of Metros. So when you really need to move those sims, heavy rail is it. So that is your efficiency by mode. And you have to make the choice of which one is going to serve where. And you've also got to work out which land use is going to work. Buses and light rail work great for low and medium density. Metro works for medium to high density. Rail can serve the lot depending what you do, but you want its major stations serving in high density areas to get the biggest bang for your buck. But rail, given its long distance, greatest stops between stations and intercity, is also great for serving out the suburbs to bring them into your centres as well. So rail can serve the both worlds there, where the other three modes might struggle, although Metro can do it too. That said, you are likely to run surface or elevated Metro once you come out of the centres and into the burbs or the industrial areas. So there is that, which then leads me into our reading before we dive into doing the transit system. Okay, so we will be reading from the book, which I've got a couple of slides here for you to look at before we get going and we start from the reading. Again, I will have it in the link below. So there's the book, Transit by Design, the practical guide to planning your public transport that works not only in real cities but also in Cities Skylines 1 and especially 2. Of course, the back cover is Transit by Design. Answers the questions on what makes it just simply work. So it's a guide for policymakers and urban practitioners, which is basically myself. So we're looking at it from not strictly the transport planning side. We're actually looking at it from the land use policy and spatial side, which is where I sit, as well as the policymakers. Those are your elected reps, whether that's councillors or members of parliament or Congress. So thinking of moving beyond car-centric, which has continuously failed us, to deliver transit systems that actually deliver like Japan's, although we cannot all be Japan. The book basically looks at new ways to think about travel demand. Planning, the idea is to get your mobility demand down, and that is done the current sphere of thinking with transport planners and urban land use planners and spatial planners. The big three is through the 15-minute city model. That is, all your local amenities and jobs are within 15 minutes. Beyond that, factoring in everything else, you would be using the transit system to get to things like work and city centres or the big industrial complexes. So we're looking at travel demand, the geometry of effective routing. This is especially for road-based transport, but also when you start laying down light rail and metro. Heavy rail you're usually building a round or two, and compares network strategies and operating models in relation to their costs. Mode efficiency, which I've just mentioned, and the benefits and drawbacks. Remember, buses are great for short and can go medium, when you've got things like bus rapid transit, but absolutely suck it long, while rail works great as long, but due to their expense and geometry, and if you place their stops together, absolutely stink at short distance. However, the two work perfectly together when you integrate them with rail doing the mahi, doing the work for long distance, and your feeder buses feeding in and out, or even light rail in and out of them. And of course, metro covers the best of both worlds, but again, it comes down to cost and what you're trying to get the benefits and the drawbacks. And this is where City Centre to Mangere Light Rail failed, because it didn't know whether it was a metro rail system or a light rail system. It was serving long distance between the airport and the city centre, which was technically covered by the airport link, which runs from the airport to Puhanui Station, then on to Monoko and Botany from 2028 for the Botany bit, and heavy rail takes over there from Puhanui into Waitemata Station. So we already had it there, so we got ourselves into a pickle with Auckland Light Rail. So through that, Nick gives us a clear analysis of real-world examples. It changes conventional transport planning models, which is why I love this book, and I'm going to apply what he has said, hopefully into my city, into Waikato and to near Manukau Ranges, to stop some of the snags I often pick up when I do transit planning. And instead advocates for serving a broad user base with diverse everyday travel needs, which comes to a pet peeve I have with transit systems around the world, but given my home base of Auckland, Tamariki, it is with Auckland Transport, who still serve a pro-city centre, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday base commuter system. Everything goes in and out of the one destination. We do have some cross-city services, not enough, and to be honest with you, Monaco also serves as a secondary hub, serving around there. But however, there is more to life, and the pandemic had proven this, and this has now been re-entrenched through the Hormuz, aka the oil crisis, with working from home, remote, flexible. Flexible can include doing 1 day at HQ, a couple of days at a satellite, and then the rest at home. So, as I said, broad user with diverse everyday travel needs. So you're not only for the community, you also for those who have flexible working arrangements, like I often do as a consulting planner or a public sector planner at any given time. Schools, tourism, leisure, visiting clients, and so on. And also, don't forget the weekends and your evenings if you want a functioning 24/7 economy that is resistant to international shocks that we're currently facing that a 9 to 5 economy is not. Carrying on. Nicholas drawing on his years of research and first-hand experience that I have known of Nick right back since 2012, so I can vouch for his work, his transit work as a land use and spatial planner myself. First-hand experience reframes public transport as a service-led operation where frequency, span, legibility matter more than the built infrastructure itself. Gold plating, everyone. Show ponies that don't work. And you can just about Google examples of these huge big mega projects that have ultimately failed. It shows how to estimate operating costs. They do apply in Cities Skylines 1 and 2. Design efficient networks. Still applies here. And evaluate the range of corridor infrastructure types. And I've just shown a couple with grade separation versus on-road versus semi-separation. And evaluate the range of corridor types and compare options for the different vehicle modes. Bus, light rail, metro, and heavy. Transit design provides the clear guidance to take that assumption, take the assumptions and guess we're out of transit planning and now we can make informed decisions to deliver real-world results that I'll be applying in Cities Skylines 2, which is heavily modded to allow as close to realism with planning and transport systems as we can get with this current game engine. And of course, Nicholas has been specialising redesigning inefficient public transport networks to make them work in traffic-heavy suburban cities like that would be any United States city for that matter. and any city in New Zealand and Australia for lower density communities. Okay. And then you have the contents. Part 1, transit strategy. Part 2, service design. Excuse me, this was me. Great. I didn't decide to use the scanner because it was being used for something else. Network planning, which is what, and then part 4, modes, vehicles, and infrastructure. Then you got the afterword and some appendix stuff. So where I'm going to do this reading from is from page, because this question gets asked constantly in game, Cities Skylines 1 and 2, and it ironically gets asked by everyone outside of the profession, planning profession as a whole, ironically first to land use planners / policy planners / spatial planners like myself, before we then go to the transport planners like Nick to go and answer the question for us. And just remember, land use affects transport, transport affects land use, and both affect your city user experience. So we're going to be doing a reading from page 222, because this question gets asked the most and gets hit on the most when a transit project goes up in the air, and that includes whether it's working or it's just gone tits up. And that is road and rail vehicles, when to use a bus and when to use a train. Train being tram, light rail, metro, or heavy. And if this was CS1, given I've got it to work, monorail. Right. Let's see if what Nick says, what I've been doing using the efficiencies of the mode for the last 11 years with exams works, or I need to adjust my strategy and use Waikato to adjust said strategy. So I'll be reading from the book. I will again have the Amazon link for the hard copy and or the ebook version in the YouTube link and on my blog. Again, this is an unsolicited recommendation and endorsement of Nicholas and his book under my own intuition and prerogative, and the reading is also the same. So for those that do have the book, I am reading from page 122, which is part of part 4. Road and rail vehicles, when to use the bus and when to use the train. And it's about 2 pages long. Okay, so I mightn't read all of it, or I might read all of it. And this is under fair use policy. So here we go. When to use the rubber wheeled vehicles and when to use steel wheels on steel rails. Page 222. On lighter used routes and local corridors where demands peak at few hundred or even a few thousand passengers per hour, it will always be cheaper, more productive to start with the bus. Now I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit. It will always be to start with the bus. You can run a decent level frequency as a base service, offering saying every 10 minutes to start. So 10 minutes means I don't need to look at the timetable. It's basically show up and go. So show up and go is anything 10 minutes or less. 10 minutes or less in terms of frequency. You can easily deliver this to an existing urban area, so you don't need to do extensive land work use outside of the corridor. You might need to do bus lanes, which prompts an argument in itself with the residents. It's a different story. And then you can scale up with improved service levels and increasing corridor priority, bus lanes, bus priority at intersections. Same with peak hour, then daylight hour, then 24/7. Although that said, if you're going 24/7, you're probably starting to jump into light rail metro as need be. The same resources put into a tram or streetcar line would see you limited with lower headways and shorter spans, or in the likelihood as the construction and operating costs of a railroad will be higher and eat into your budget. Remember, we're talking about city budgets here, not national budgets, which are not bound by those constraints using modern monetary theory, which is what I use here in Cities Skylines 1 and 2. That said, it still eats into time and budget and inconvenience as well. You might argue that a tramline is more attractive than the bus, which it is, at least superficially, but if you can only run it once every half hour, then the service is never going to be very successful. So it comes down to your frequency patterns, let alone reliability. On the flip side, once you've placed a rail-based system, one place where a rail-based system becomes the better option is where your corridor has demands up and around something like 5,000 people per hour. This is the case for where dedicated corridors, although a big enough busway can easily accommodate this as well. But this is where I can disagree with our transport planners a bit. Busways are very land intensive to light rail. You got to remember a single bus lane is 3.2 meters to allow the bus to do 80 kilometers an hour. Light rails much less than that. So corridor wise, and this is why I'm a bit finicky with airport to Botany being a busway rather than being light rail, is a busway eats up more land, and also as confirmed with the even my phone goes to on that one. You've also got to remember, which is why I get into a bit of an argument with my colleagues as transport planners, is the WHO, World Health Organization, have got countless studies coming out from the Northern Hemisphere now. Rubber wheels release microplastics, which are exceedingly toxic to our environment, get ingested, and cannot be caught by treatment plants nor by our digestive systems. Where steel wheels don't, it just goes into rust, which does decompose back into the ground through time, and if we've accidentally inhaled it, it just passes out the other end as iron, unless iron intake for your blood, anyone. But it's especially true when you are talking about a route in a road or street environment. When you're running through intersections and traffic lights, or you're in an urban environment with little ability to widen for more lanes or bigger stops, going rail-based mode can be the best option to fit a high-capacity transit in a finite space. Now, I'm just going to stop there because we've got a case in point here. If you look at look at this. Here's light rail. Technically takes up less lane than a general lane. Now, if I find one with a bus lane attached, actually, it's the city centre, transit mall. Okay, technically takes up less space, and you've got to remember, my buses max out at 130. My trams max out at 480. So in a tightly constrained corridor like a city centre, a metropolitan centre, or a historical urban area, going light rail immediately would, despite the upfront capex costs, is actually more viable, which is why you can see light rail already going into position over busways in some cases. The bus, although it's still here, and will be more acting as a feeder into the metro system. Why light rail is better in that case, because if I go to the zones, this is all mixed. This is where the light rail currently is actually serving medium. It's not serving light density. It's actually serving medium density right off the bat. So we're looking at anywhere between 3 to 8 stories mixed use right off. So buses are going to automatically get overwhelmed in this tight constraint. Light rail is going to pay dividends, and the light rail is actually also feeding into the metro system, which can carry up to 800 to 1,000 people an hour. And when we're near the rail stations, again, 1 to 1,000 plus, depending on how I've got the consist. So there are cases, as the book has pointed out, where light rail does work straight off the bat, and in other cases where buses do work. And this all comes down to the constraints on your corridor, but also what area you're trying to serve all at once. And this is likely to become bus lanes later on as well, as it feeds up and around. So going back to the reading. The issue with using smaller capacity conventional buses in the very high demand street corridors is you end up running the bus every 30 seconds. Hello, bus sausage. This schedule works in a busway, Northern Busway, although that's known to bus sausage at the moment at certain stations. But again, land use. Busways are more land intensive than light rail and metro rail. And plus you have offline bus stations with bypass lanes, so you'll see that with my bus stations. If you have this space for grade sacred intersections. Likewise, if you can dedicate a whole street to bus with long banks of bus stops with bypass lanes, it also works as well. You saw that transit mall earlier. It's able to run high frequencies and capacities. It's still restricted to 130 compared to 480 with light rail. However, in a street level environment with traffic light cycling, you can't actually run a bus every 30 seconds. You get the platoon of buses every 2 minutes instead. Hello, bus sausage. That means as they arrive to the next stop, we've got bunching. So you've got bunching in the intermediate stops and sausaging in your centres and their terminus or origin stations. So there you go. And also with quite a lot of land needed, there also goes the impact of your transit-orientated developments being as efficient as they could compared to rail. And then Nick goes on saying, as you start trying to throw more buses down, or as you're trying to tighten the cycles, the bus sausage and the bunching just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is the problem we've got in Auckland City Centre at the moment, especially with Customs Street and Simon Street, which is why one of the big pushes for light rail. This sets an upper limit on how many buses you can run inline, rail-like arrangement with rail. In practice, higher capacity bus stops do need to have at least 2 lanes in each direction for both buses. Again, very land intensive. Furthermore, if you have more than one service pattern operating on the corridor, passengers will have a hard time boarding the right bus. Out of 4 or more vehicles that can arrive any time, you're playing lottery, and this is where you start peeving your passengers off. Don't usually have that problem with light rail, because as you see with the bus plaza, with the tram plaza, which if you look at the difference between the bus, so this is the bus one. This serves 1, 2, 4, 8, 12, 20 buses, 20 routes. The tram plaza for less space serves 2. So I just go serves 6, but that's all I need. But you can see the difference in lanes and space capacity. Carrying on. So yeah, if you've got more than one service pattern there, the buses, you can have the best wayfinding in the world, and I have done wayfinding with the best in the world. You're still going to have passengers going, does this bus go this way? And your driver and your other passengers getting internally fed up. Stop groups is preferable, which makes there is ways to do it. Overall, bus stops are even larger. You're consuming more land, as you can see here on my left-hand side, compared to the tram plaza. It's equivalent to 6 lanes. That's huge. As again, look at this. Look at the land consumption. And remember, this is going to be a high density here because this is the city centre. So if you don't have the spaces to add the extra lanes to the bus, you're starting to hit length constraints of bus-based vehicles and the bunching effects to overcome. This point, using the much longer rail vehicle running at low frequencies can give you, so instead of having it every 30 seconds, you can get away with every 3 minutes, but it's going to work and not peeve your passengers off because you've got higher reliability and higher capacity overall. Remember, 130 compared to 480 using light rail and higher for metro and heavy. For example, moving 5,000 passengers an hour could be achieved with a 60-metre long light train running every 5 minutes. That's 12 trains an hour, each with a space for 450 passengers, giving a maximum of 540 passengers per hour. The equivalent would be an 80-metre long bendy bus, so the bendy boys coming every 90 seconds. You can see, so this is where your motive efficiencies are kicking in. In practice means a bunch of 2 or more buses at a time, which is also going to confuse your passengers on the UX and CX side, user experience, customer experience. Instead of using that one light rail vehicle every 5 minutes still provides a very good, so remember it's under 10 minutes. Remember, as soon as you hit 10 minutes or less, it's show up and go. You don't need a timetable, you just need to know which platform you're going to. Provide a very good service frequency for passengers, but still amounts to only 1 at every second or third cycle of traffic lights, unless it's grade separated. So you'll be able to operate signal preemption systems, which I can do in this game. And the algorithm's pretty good. As soon as a tram does pull up to the stop, unless it had just recently cycled red, the green priority usually comes up pretty quick to move the tram through, and that is set through both traffic and, more specifically, especially if it's set up properly, traffic tools essentials. Oh, and he's got the traffic operating ones. Yay! This is going to be very interesting to test out this theory in the book. And so you're able to operate the preemption systems without needing to duplicate bus lanes or grade separated running ways. Again, saving land. If I'm having to go higher capacity beyond light rail again, it will be time to spend the big bucks and go into the metro system. Also, that moderately higher headway, each train will always be able to stop, dwell, clear the platform before the next train arrives. 5 minutes. 3 minutes being probably the minimum you can get away with. This means they can stop inline without multiple platforms or bypass tracks. Okay, so if I move that over, I don't have a small plaza in place at the moment. But if I jump down to here, I can have 2 lines that way and 2 lines that way, and they should not basically running up each other's backside. They should be able to just flow through, and we shouldn't have a wayfinding problem either. Just to show you what the small plaza looks like. Of course, I've got the off-grade ones if I need to go off-grade. Large plaza. Where's it gone? Small tram plaza, so if I was to pop him in, let's not pop him into where I've got a zone. Okay, there it is. There it is there. Okay. And yeah, it just carries on. So I do have that available as well, which also just reminds me quickly, I have not done this. Da 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 da. Whee! I forgot to put in the taxi stop. Oh, I might have done it, but I'll just put in another one anyway. Okay. Carrying on. Yep, they can stop in line without multiple platforms. Your wayfinding doesn't need to go to custard. It's very easy to understand. Allowing for compact station footprint despite high capacity. While bus transit system can have good performance and capacity on corridors with constrained width, the foundation level of a bus system will be reached before that of the rail system. For routes with high demands on fixed corridors that cannot be expanded or streets that cannot be widened further, a rail mode can provide the solution right off the bat. That is a high capacity and better performing equivalent bus system solution that fits in the same space. So as you see here, sometimes it's just easy to go light rail off the bat. Otherwise you're going to have problems. Nicholas goes on to say, it is fair to say that some of these bus versus train considerations can be considered irrelevant when you have an existing network or service that you're building off. For example, if you have existing tram lines that you're extending further, or a legacy freight railroad that you wish to convert to passenger use. In these situations, there may be a strong case to expand rail base to leverage off the existing system. Auckland doesn't have that. I'm laying new here. In that case, you're only paying major costs of extending the network, which is what Sydney's working out. Conversely, if you already have corridor capacity issues, decisions around increasing vehicle slide with a larger mode may be more appropriate, and then decisions around headway and alternative modes. Say you've got an existing train table that can't be widened, has limited throughput, or you have a set of bus stops where there's no more space downtown. These high capacity vehicle mode may be the only way to gain more capacity without having to rip the system up. And that concludes the chapter there. Long story short, yes, my mode's efficiency system is basically right for the most part, but as always, what I don't, although I do factor, is you've also got the capacity and the corridor as well. Corridor system as the corridor width and availability as well. Remembering light rail takes up less room than a general lane, and light rail moves more. So with bearing that was from Nicholas's book, Transit by Design, a practical guide to planning public transport system that works. So for the most part, when choosing between bus and rail, I am going down the right paths depending on efficiency of the mode, capacity, and corridor availability and land availability. Again, you can get his book. I will post the Amazon link to the hard copy or to the ebook description in the link in the description for YouTube below, or in the blog post itself whenever that goes up. Which now brings me to laying the transit system, which also includes heavy rail. And of course, I have not fully. I might have. That depends if it's been right. Yes, I have. So it's time to get ready to lay the rail system. So first one would be in here. It goes through, pops out the tunnel, and then goes out that direction. That's a very convoluted line, but I haven't finished all the rail stations. The other one would be still the same through, and would feed out into that way, and then or I could which would probably be best. The other one is I've got a line that I can bring down through here and service out. I would probably just stop here for the moment. I don't need. Well, I could also bring that line around to service out here, here as well, and I've got these separate lines there for the freight. Now, do I have these? Do have their own. And I have got the train station set either side, so I don't technically need to worry about that. And it is time to bring that online. Yeah. Okay, and then we'll look at setting up the bus system. I won't set the tram system up fully yet, because we've got to have it service, because it's actually not technically ready to go yet, because it is not connected. Well, no, that one isn't. Yeah, so I will connect this all up off screen, and then we'll show. Then I'll do the parks off screen, show, and then we'll be ready to do 4.0. Okay, we're back, and the bus routes, the tram routes, the metro routes, and even the rail routes have all been laid down, and I have put in some parks. The parks will continue to be added as the urban development continues, because what I'll be looking for is gaps that are become so-called non-developable. There goes the England again. And we can backfill those with either formal parks, or I can backfill them with pathways and forests, urban forests. Now, one thing, there's two more things we have to do. Okay, before we sink into those. So, we've got 9 bus lines. And remember, I was following, as best as I can, the transit by design. And just remember that reading about road-based rail versus rail-based. Try that again. I'm really struggling with England in the second part of this video today. Road-based transit and rail-based transit. Remembering rail-based includes metro, light rail, or trams, and those are the buses. Where is it? Heavy rail, and it even tells you here. Passenger trains that transport citizens and tourists within the city and between city and outside connections. Trams, since within the city and also within the city, remembering the efficiencies of the mode. Cargo routes I won't set up yet until the city's a little bit more established and I know where things like industry are going. One thing I will keep an eye on is I could, because this is pretty much an island. Now, there's two things I can do here, because it is going to support some industry and could even get residential down on this side to support it later on. So we're just going off on a wee tangent. So we're looking for... Well, it's a sunken, so I'm looking for suburban. So that does on the opposite side as well, though it's not necessarily needed. So I have got that one available. We've got the elevated, although we're not elevating. We've got the local train station available. And can add a subway interface if I do wish to bring the metro out as well. So that could be a nice little jam. Okay, we've got Central, which we don't need. Nope. The Netherlands one. Nope. I think, was there any more? That, and we've got the big one already in there. Was there the big one? There is a specific one. I'll just go content. Sunken bypass, elevated bypass. Okay, so no, and it's basically doing that. So that's got a huge, big, whopping park and ride. So I could add. What I could do is move the rail system around and somehow sync it in there. It's most likely to go in. It would go in here with a road connection out, and I just have to move the lines around a little bit. The other, yeah, because that's the passenger connecting up. The other way is to so-called, ways to sync around it to keep it in line. It could just be that I need to extend him down a little bit further to connect up elsewhere, but we will get that closer to the time, because that still allows cargo to run for it, but we're not there yet, so I can add another station there. But huge sidetrack. Oh, and the other thing was to connect also that up. It's still sidetracking. Nope. Done all the post boxes, and that is run a big as, and I have done it before, and it has worked. Run a big as cycleway. Boom. And connect it up to here. Once we do start doing residential and that might be good later on, and you can go on a cycle trail. But as I was saying, yeah, we've connected it all up. So as you can see, this is the information. I've even got an intercity line. So it's telling me the length. The length is all good. Stops are all good. Buses, it's all electric buses. We've got some longer ones out there, but that's fine given what they're serving. So North Shore to Pocono or Pokeno is basically out to here and back again. So they're all set, ready to go. City Centre to North Shore, that's a temporary one. So some routes, like there is some long ones that go across at the moment that would normally be covered by rail or even light rail. But because the city's not big enough yet, we start with bus and then we just go through the upgrade stages. So bus, light rail, metro, and then heavy if possible. But that this one here is basically from here, pops over and pops back, because the only other way across at the moment is you pull into the central station is the tram. Heavy rail, we've got the 2 lines, so of course that's perfectly normal. Tram, we've got 1, so that tram line is running from here, comes down, crosses this bridge, and then ends up in here, and then circles its way back out, serving this side. Another one in due time. When I've finished that, will come out here, cross, come down, service this side, and pop back out. Now the tram line is pushing maximum length that I would like to normally take before we start getting what's called the spawning. Now this can be resolved by, so I've just got to not add too many, as you can see here. You don't want too many more stops added to it. So if I am going to do even smaller localized services, make sure your stations are multi-platform, or you have bypasses to go to do run rounds, which again was mentioned in the book. That was covering buses, but it can also work for light rail. The second one that's going to be on the northern side will be the same, but it can work. What can cut down a lot of dead running back to maintenance and that is make sure you've got tram stations, and that can be certainly renamed. have your tram depot, your small tram depots, and even at each end, your big ones nearby, so they don't have to do a lot of dead running on the way back. Dead running. So yeah, that stops it, and that also applies to buses and buses as well. Oops. Then we've also got the metro. So I have put in one. He serves along here. It's just because it's more efficient to start the metro, and there is a depot ready to go over here. It's easier to start him now just because there's no train stations, to run him across and hopefully cut down some cross commuting. Otherwise they're all going to get in their car to get to the industry. I am probably going to have to bridge this across because the way this map was designed, as I mentioned previously, there's big banks and it's a pain to get these across, so I probably need another bridge here. That said, ferries also work, so we can get ready for the ferries too. So we'll see how that goes. So you might start with a ferry line, then bring the metro out as the city develops. Then, of course, yep, we've done that. So we've got the bus lines, got the train, got the tram, got the metro, no cargo yet, and so we're pretty much ready to go. And as I said, the parks are also done. Extra parks will be added depending on how the urban development takes off, and use the parks to backfill in the urban spaces that come out. Now, one thing, there's two things I have not done yet: cycle parking and low rent housing. Whoopsie daisy. So, I want the French, because they have some of the best ones there. No, actually, I do not want the French yet. Sorry. I want the Eastern Europeans. You can't get them in the North American sets, which is a bit of a dunger. But it's a case of whatever. So we'll put a small amount in here, and then I'll do a small amount of mixed use, European mixed use. So that we have got some European coming through. And then what I'll do is shoot back over, look for the French. The French. That's all smaller ones for the French. It will do it, but that's not the best optimum. Yeah, I can drop some French stuff there, and all that needs me to do is, a bit of a sidetrack for a second, is jump over to schooling. Go for the French elementary school. Okay, and probably just add an extra post box. Reasons. Park, just get an extra small park in there, so... Oh, we've got plenty of actually parks floating around. It's not a major per se in of itself, so in that case I'm more likely to go sports park. Add in the skate park. I will actually chuck in the playground. I'll just go for a smaller one. Apologies if you can hear that in the background. I've got the tractor mowing the sports fields next door. I actually live next to sports fields. Yep, that works fine there. And that just leaves... Oh, I can chuck in a coffee shop somewhere. Sorry, this is me just... And then go back to French housing. No, mixed use. Slap some mixed use in there. So we do have some French stuff going. Actually, yeah, change your mind. I'll actually make that all that, And then search up northeastern. There's a helipad there. That will not work, so that's going to be low density. So you just got to watch what you slap down in places. Okay, so that leaves it like that, which now concludes to the last part, which is some cycle parking. So I do have, because I've got cycleways in that, so we shoot over and we'll slap down some cycle parking. And just looking where it already exists. So I use the bus stops to firm that up. But we're also looking for places like transit stations. Okay. Whoops. So we'll do the big ones first. Okay, in some cases, the smaller ones. Whoops, what happens if I keep going back to the right spot? Okay. Now the way this one works, this one's a little bit of a gem because you can come straight back on that side. What I'm actually looking for at the moment is my transit stations. I won't slap it all in yet because I need to see where the bike patterns are. And plus I've also got bus stops floating around as well, which certainly helps. I don't usually charge for bike parking. Not normally. Unless I really need to ration it out. Where's the schools? That definitely needs it. Can I get the large one in here? Yeah, I can actually. Okay, so the upgrade I'm doing to this one is rear entrance, which gives capacity. Additional storage space, which gives more capacity. It also means I can sink a pathway around the back. And changing rooms. So if you're wondering what the heck I'm doing. Okay. Got some there. Some cases I'll just sink down to... See, that's dead space. So that's a good one to do there. Don't need to worry about residential areas in of itself. Okay, that's missing a pathway. Okay, so it just does that, yeah. Not the nicest of connections, but it still does the sodding job. Okay, so not after perfection there. Again, utilize the gaps that are technically available. In some cases, I will even drop down to simple roadside. Which is not exactly going to work there, but I can sink another... You got to remember also, some of these facilities have their own parking as well. But as I said, I've got to wait till we get going just to see where we need to so-called drop the bike parking. That would have actually probably been a better one to drop there to allow, in all honesty, and probably we'll see how that all goes. Don't need it down the other side at the moment. It's got bike parking as it is, so we'll leave it as it is for the moment. We'll shoot back over, just watch the demand and see where it goes. So there we have it. We are ready to basically go with Waikato. Let's be clicking. So we're now ready for 4.0 and letting the simulator rip. This has been 3.2, where we've basically had the transit system and the bike, last of the biking and the parks all stitched up. We've also done had a look at transit by design, a practical guide to planning public transport that works by Nicolas Reid, as well as a reading from page 222, the old debate of road-based versus rail-based transport. I will provide the links to his book, which you can get an ebook or hard book on Amazon or any other good place that you get books from. We'll be back with 4.0, letting the simulator rip and getting those first sims and businesses in here. I am Palpatine001, aka the Senate, and this is Waikato with Cities Skylines 2, planning, building, and experiencing.